You don't notice the first crack in a foundation until the rain seeps in. For me, that crack looked suspiciously like a manila envelope wedged behind the microwave in our kitchen, like it didn't want to be found, but couldn't bear not being discovered either. That morning, I wasn't snooping. I was making waffles. Real waffles, none of that frozen nonsense. Blueberries, whipped cream, the whole weekend dad routine. I had even ironed my t-shirt, which, in retrospect, was tragically optimistic. She walked in humming, hair still damp, cheeks slightly flushed, and wearing the sweatshirt she reserved for comfort days. "You're up early," she said, kissing my cheek like we were still us. I should have noticed the hum was new. I should have asked what she was so chipper about. But I didn't. I smiled like a fool, handed her a plate, and said, "Big plans today?" She paused, just a split second, like her brain needed to buffer. Hair appointment, then lunch with Marnie. Harmless. Predictable. She always mentioned Marnie when she wanted me not to ask follow-ups. That should have been my first clue. But no, I bought it. Hook, line, waffles. When I reached behind the microwave for a paper towel roll, I found the envelope. Thick. Sealed. The kind that doesn't scream, bills, but murmurs, mistake. I should have left it alone. That's what a good husband would do, right? Respect boundaries. Instead, I did what any man does when the hum of normalcy feels too smooth to be real. I opened it. Inside, a printed reservation confirmation. Hotel. Spa suite. 2 guests. Friday to Sunday. I blinked. It was Sunday. She was standing 10 feet from me eating blueberries like her conscience was spotless. "Hey," I said, as casual as I could manage. "What hotel is it Marnie likes again?" She looked up, chewed, swallowed. "The Marigold, why?" "Bingo. That's what I thought," I said, nodding slowly, like I hadn't just stepped into quicksand. "She ever take the spa suite?" Her fork paused midair. A beat. Then 2. "I think so." "What?" "Just wondering." I smiled. It was the kind of smile you wear when you've just found a snake under your welcome mat and have to pretend it's a garden hose. I didn't confront her. Not yet. That's not how betrayal works when you're a thinker. When you're the type of guy who lines up his socks by shade and season. No. First you gather. Observe. Inventory the lies like you're restocking disappointment on a shelf. That night, I didn't sleep. She snored softly beside me, tucked in like nothing had fractured. I stared at the ceiling, tracing lines that weren't there, waiting for the cracks to spread. I always believed you could learn everything you need to know about a person by the way they fold their laundry. Me? I'm a 2-finger roller. Tight. Precise. My wife. She just crumples things like they're auditioning to be stress balls. Sunday night, I was folding socks, my socks, specifically, when I realized her drawer hadn't been opened in days. We'd had a routine. I did the whites, she did the colors. But suddenly, the colors were multiplying like guilt in a locked room. Tank tops I didn't recognize. Lacy numbers that didn't come from the Target clearance rack. And perfume. New. Spicy. The kind that says I'm not going to yoga, I'm going to sin. I held up a sock. Mine, gray with a tiny hole in the toe. That hole had outlived 2 promotions, my appendix, and the neighbor's failed attempt at starting a rock band. That sock had history. She, apparently, wanted mystery. That evening, she came home later than usual. Her hair was too styled for a casual hangout, and her phone buzzed twice in quick succession before she silenced it without looking. That's when I knew. Not suspected, knew. I kept my voice even. "How's Marnie?" She blinked. "Tired. Her new puppy's a menace." I nodded slowly. "Puppy, huh?" And here I thought she lived in a 3rd-floor apartment with a no-pet policy. Silence. A long one. She glanced toward the fridge, as if it might offer her a better lie. Then came the classic pivot. "Are you accusing me of something?" "No," I said. "Not yet." She scoffed. "This is ridiculous." "You're right," I said. Ridiculous would be folding your life around someone, only to realize they've been hanging it out to dry behind your back. She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic." "Maybe," I said, still folding socks, still calm. "But at least I'm being honest." She turned and walked into the bedroom, muttering something about how this was just stress and projection. Classic cheater playbook. Chapter 3. Gaslight with a side of indignation. That night, I started a folder on my laptop. Labeled it something innocent, car warranty info. Inside, screenshots, notes, photos of receipts, times, places, patterns. It wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about knowing. And knowing changes everything. The next morning, I made her coffee. 2 sugars, no milk. Because apparently, oat milk was too predictable now. We used to match cups, blue ceramic. Lately, hers had a gold rim. Everything had changed in ways so small they whispered. I slid the cup across the table. Thanks, she mumbled, scrolling her phone. I watched the screen flash bright as she tilted it away. Not suspicious at all. Need the charger? I asked. She shook her head, setting the phone face down. Again. So I waited. She went for a run, real or imagined, who could tell anymore. While she was out, I opened her laptop. No hacking, no fancy tech. Just patience. Password? Vanilla. I kid you not. Vanilla. Her ex's favorite ice cream. A fact I learned the same year I found his text in her drafts folder. Unsent, but far too poetic for a guy who once peed in a plant at our housewarming. The laptop opened with a cheerful chime. I didn't feel cheerful. I felt like a mortician prepping my own marriage. Inbox. Instagram. Google Photos. Nothing jumps out right away until I see the recycle bin. A single folder. Vegas Work Trip 23. I clicked it. Inside, hundreds of photos. Her and the girls. Only one man appears in every group shot. Tall. Gym fit. Wears aviators indoors. You know the type. And then I saw it. The last photo. Her in a hotel robe, hair up, wine in hand, next to Mr. Aviator. His hand is on her knee. She's smiling like she just got away with a crime. My stomach dropped, but I didn't rage. I hit restore. She came back mid-upload. I played it cool. How was the run? She shrugged. Sweaty. My headphones died. Bummer. I nodded. Later that night, while she was in the shower, I uploaded everything to the cloud under a private folder. Not public. Not yet. This wasn't war. Not yet. But I was no longer a husband trying to fix things. I was a man walking a line, with one foot already off the edge. I didn't confront her that night, or the next morning, or even the morning after that. Because if there's one thing you learn from being married to someone who lies with a smile, it's this. Timing is everything. I started going for drives. Just after dinner, when she was busy with client calls in the office that somehow always ended just after sunset. I'd get in my car and just drive. Not far. Just enough to feel like I was outside the fog of our house. I'd pull into grocery store parking lots or sit by the riverwalk where teenagers smoked and thought they were invisible. I'd sit in silence, listening to my own breath and wondering how long I'd been breathing for 2 people. Sometimes, I'd bring my notebook. The one she gave me on our 3rd anniversary. Leather-bound. I'd never written in it before. Too nice, I thought. Now I'd held a log. June 14th, 9:22 p.m. Phone call lasted 53 minutes. She laughed 5 times. Once said, "Stop it, you're bad." Wine glass on desk. No background Zoom noise. June 15th, 8:07 p.m. Same guy in photos, found his name in her Google contacts. Elliot M., Marketing, Vegas. Checked LinkedIn. Not married. Works out too much for someone in branding. June 17th, 11:03 a.m. Her phone buzzed. She said, "It's just spam," but smiled when she read it. I wasn't cataloging for revenge. Not yet. I was documenting reality because living with her felt like I was slowly forgetting how truth worked. Then came the detour. It was Saturday. She left early, gym bag, yoga pants, a kiss on my forehead like she was blessing a loyal pet. Going to bar with Marnie, she said. Right. Marnie, our new scapegoat. I waited exactly 18 minutes after she left, long enough for her to commit to the lie, not long enough for her to double back, and followed. I didn't tail her like in the movies. No trench coat, no binoculars. Just a guy in a gray Civic watching his wife's taillights fade. She didn't go to the gym. She drove right past it. Took the exit toward the edge of town, where the buildings turn into trees and overpriced bakeries. Then she pulled into a boutique hotel. Classy. Quiet. The kind with real keys, not cards. I didn't follow her in. Didn't need to. I waited. 36 minutes later, a man walked out. Mr. Aviators. Same jawline from the Vegas photos. He wasn't looking around. Didn't think he had to. He looked comfortable. Like a man used to entering the side door of another man's life. He walked to his car and left. No kiss, no hug. Just business. That's what hurt the most, weirdly, the lack of passion. Like this wasn't even a guilty thrill anymore. Just maintenance. I stayed parked until she came out, an hour later. She looked ordinary. Not guilty. Not radiant. just like a woman who finished a chore. I drove home ahead of her, sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and an unread newspaper, trying to decide what kind of man I was going to be. She walked in 15 minutes later, dropped her bag, kissed my head again. Class was brutal, she sighed. Marnie nearly fainted in the second set. I nodded, turned a page. You okay? She asked. Just tired, I said, thinking about changing my socks. She laughed. What? Nothing, I smiled. Just need a new pair. She walked upstairs, humming again. And I sat there, staring at my coffee, thinking about how betrayal doesn't always show up with red lipstick or late-night confessions. Sometimes it slips in quietly, in the fold between polite conversation and routine pecks on the cheek. Sometimes it wears yoga pants and says, Marnie. That night, I opened the cloud folder and renamed it, Sock Drawer Theory. I added the hotel timestamp, the car, the man, and I started writing a letter, not to her, but to myself. A reminder, a guide for the man I didn't want to become. It began like this. You're not crazy. You're not weak. You notice because you pay attention. That is not a flaw. She lied because she wanted to. That is not your fault. You stayed too long because you believed in her. That's not weakness. That's love. But now it's time to leave. You'd be surprised how loud a quiet house can get. It was a Tuesday. That bland, middle child of a day. She was working late, again. I'd heard that phrase so often, it had lost all meaning. Like, love you on autopilot or we'll talk later. I sat in the living room surrounded by framed photos of our life, trips, birthdays, that one hike where we got lost for 3 hours and still called it romantic. I used to look at those pictures and feel warmth. Now, it felt like flipping through someone else's scrapbook. Like I'd walked into a model home with photos already staged. There was one photo in particular, her in a yellow sundress, laughing with her head back, wind in her hair. I used to love that one. Took it myself on our anniversary in Savannah. But now, I looked at that laugh and wondered if I had ever been the real reason for it, or just the placeholder she smiled near. I picked up the frame, turned it over, and opened the back. Slipped the photo out, left the frame empty. It wasn't dramatic, just practical. The same way she'd removed me from her heart, subtle, clean, efficient. My phone buzzed. Her, running late. Don't wait up, red heart. I stared at the emoji. It was her favorite one, easy, non-committal. It used to make me smile. Now it looked like a lie dressed in glitter. Instead of replying, I stood up and walked into our bedroom. It was too neat. Like she'd cleaned it for a guest. The smell of her perfume lingered, something citrusy, probably from Elliot's recommendations. I opened her nightstand. Not to snoop, just to see. There was a card tucked under her Kindle. To New Beginnings, E. Handwritten. Casual. Intimate. Dagger-like. So he was giving her cards now. Nice. I put it back exactly where I found it. Didn't want to give her the satisfaction of thinking I cared enough to react. Instead, I did something that felt oddly peaceful. I packed a bag. Not everything. Not even the essentials. Just a few shirts, my passport, my grandfather's watch, and the notebook. I wasn't running. I was rebalancing. I drove across town to a motel with numbers for a name. The kind with vending machines and soap that smells like static. Paid in cash. No ID. The clerk didn't ask questions. He just handed me a key and pointed down the hall like I was a man who needed quiet more than comfort. Room 108 smelled like yesterday. Peeling wallpaper, humming mini fridge. But it had something my house didn't anymore, honesty. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the blank TV screen until the silence started talking back. That's when I opened the notebook again. Page 2. You don't have to explode to be broken. Sometimes things just unthread. If she wanted to fight for this, she would have. Instead, she decorated the crime scene. You were never boring. You were safe. She mistook safety for stagnation. That's on her. I slept surprisingly well. The next morning, I drove to the park. The one where we used to take weekend walks. I parked, sat on a bench, and just watched people pass. Kids chasing pigeons. A couple holding hands. An old man feeding ducks with the same slow-motion focus I felt in my soul. I checked my phone. For texts. Her. Where are you? Did you leave early? Your bag's gone. Call me. Please. I didn't answer. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I just didn't feel like performing anymore. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Listened to it an hour later while eating chips from a vending machine. Her voice, trembling. Albert, I don't know what's going on. If this is about the other night, I can explain. Just, please, come home. We can talk. We always said we'd talk. Funny. She'd gone silent for months, and now, suddenly, she remembered we had mouths. I saved the voicemail. Not for nostalgia. For proof. Proof that the silence had gotten her attention. I returned to the house that night, not to stay, but to collect the last piece of evidence I needed. The laptop. Hers. I knew her password. She wasn't clever. Sunshine 88. The nickname her mother gave her as a kid. The same mother who once warned me, she loves fireworks, not fireplaces. I should have listened. Inside the laptop, I found the final nail. A folder labeled, Work Trips. Inside, itineraries, invoices, receipts. 2 spa sessions booked under Mr. and Mrs. Calder. My last name, replaced. I smiled. Actually smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, but because there was clarity now. It's one thing to suspect betrayal, another to witness it. But the cold, typed spelling of someone else's future, written in your font? That's when grief gives way to decision. There's a moment, just one, when your heart stops begging for an apology and starts drafting a blueprint. That moment found me in the middle of aisle 9 at the hardware store, staring at a row of padlocks. Not for her. For me. Because when someone rearranges your life without your permission, you start locking down what's still yours. Identity. Dignity. Silence. The cashier didn't ask questions. Just rang up my card. Padlock, burner phone, flash drive, prepaid Visa, small notebook, and, because irony deserved a seat at the table, a roll of duct tape. That night, I sat in room 108 with a legal pad and my laptop. No music. No distractions. Just method. The folder I'd been building sock drawer theory was now nearly a gigabyte. Screenshots, photos, messages, receipts. All curated with the kind of care I once reserved for anniversary gifts. I backed it up to 3 locations. Cloud. USB. A private email address registered under the name Gavin Ellis, a pseudonym I'd used once in college to prank my roommate. Revenge isn't always about explosions. Sometimes it's about control. Tight. Surgical. The next morning, I made a call. Hey, said the voice on the other end. Didn't expect to hear from you. Still have access to that print server? A pause. What are we printing? Truth. He chuckled, but didn't ask more. That's the thing about old friends with tech jobs and shaky morals. They know how to read between the lines. I sent the file. 30 pages, front and back. Timestamps, photos, the works. He said it'd be ready by noon. Laminated, even. A courtesy. Next, I called her office. Hi, this is Elliot's assistant, I said, calm and professional. He asked me to confirm his noon meeting location. Can you verify the address? The receptionist gave it up instantly. People always do when you sound confident. I wrote it down, thanked her, and hung up. Then I drove. Not to the office. Not to confront her. But to the bank. I had opened a new account 2 weeks prior, one she didn't know about. Transferred half our savings. The half she never noticed because she didn't balance the books, she balanced alibis. I left a single dollar in the joint account. Not to be petty. For symbolism. I also updated my will. Removed her. Donated my life insurance policy to a small nonprofit that rescues stray dogs. She always hated dogs. By 11:45, I was parked across the street from the cafe. The one with the outdoor patio and white umbrellas. Elliot was already there, sipping something expensive. She arrived at 11:58, on brand. Hugs, a cheek kiss, laughter that echoed. She wore the necklace I bought her in Paris. At 12:01, the delivery guy arrived, backpack slung over one shoulder, envelopes in hand. He dropped the package on their table. She looked confused. Elliot opened it. Her smile faltered. 30 pages of truth now sat between their wine glasses. I watched her expression curdle. Watched Elliot push back his chair. Watched her try to explain, gesture, smile, reach for his hand. He stood up. And then he walked away. I didn't cheer. Didn't clap. Just drove away with the air conditioning off, windows down, letting the wind take something from me I couldn't name. That night, she came home like a thunderstorm looking for a fire. The front door slammed. Her heels echoed like accusations. Albert, she screamed. What did you do? I stepped out of the kitchen, wiping my hands on a dish towel. Dinner's in the fridge, I said. Don't play games with me, she snapped. Elliot left me. Because of you. I raised an eyebrow. Because of me? You humiliated me. No, I said, calmly. You humiliated yourself. I just sent the receipts. She stood there, eyes wild, lip trembling like she couldn't decide whether to cry or swing. How long have you known? Long enough, I said. Long enough to stop pretending. Her voice cracked. So what now? You want a divorce? I looked at her like she'd asked if the sky was blue. No, I said. I have a divorce. You just haven't signed it yet. She went quiet. Her face drained. I reached for the folder on the table, black leather, clean edges. Everything's here. I'm not asking for anything. No house, no car, no fighting. You can keep the ring. Pawn it, if you want. She opened it slowly. Her hands were shaking. I trusted you, she whispered. No, I corrected. You trusted I'd never find out. I turned and walked upstairs. Left her there with the papers and the weight of consequences. No yelling. No revenge. Just math. Actions. Reactions. Totaled and tallied. As I packed the last of my things, I glanced at the sock drawer. Still neat. Still folded. Like nothing had happened. But it had. Everything had. You'd think once the truth's out, the storm would pass. That the sky would clear, the weight would lift, and you'd finally breathe without wondering what's real. But nobody talks about the silence that follows impact. The quiet hum of a life recalculating. The day after I handed her the divorce folder, I woke up in a studio apartment above a used bookstore. Hardwood floors, creaky pipes, the faint smell of ink and mildew from downstairs. It was perfect. Not because it was grand. Because it was mine. No eggs waiting in the pan. No passive-aggressive notes by the coffee machine. Just my breath in my chest and the small satisfaction of a clean slate. I brewed my coffee black, French press, no sugar. She used to call that psychotic. I called it peaceful. Around 9 a.m., I got a text. One word. Her. Why? Not how could you or please come back. Just a 3-letter attempt to rewrite the narrative. I didn't answer. You don't feed fires when you're finally building something that won't burn. Instead, I walked to the park with a notebook in my hand. Not the legal pad anymore. This one was smaller. Blue cover. New. I started a fresh list. What I gained. My own coffee. My own key. Sleep without grinding teeth. The right to not be the backup plan. Around noon, I checked my email. The lawyer had already filed. She hadn't contested anything. Not a single red mark or revision. That told me more than any confrontation ever could. This wasn't heartbreak. This was exit strategy. I thought I'd feel victorious. But instead, I just felt still. Like I was finally sitting inside the pause button I'd been hammering for years. Later that afternoon, I returned to the house. Not to see her. Just to collect the final thing I needed, the box. It was in the attic. Labeled Christmas lights, because even betrayal needs camouflage. Inside, old letters, photos, ticket stubs. A dried flower from our first anniversary trip to Asheville. She told me once that it made her feel like poetry. I took the box not out of sentiment, but for evidence. Not for court. For clarity. Back at the apartment, I dumped it on the floor and started sorting. Letter from year 1. You make me feel safe. Note from year 3. Promise me we'll never get boring. Card from year 6. Sorry I snapped. I just feel trapped sometimes. Trapped. That word hit different now. I held a photo of us at the beach, her squinting into the sun, my arm draped around her shoulders, both of us laughing at something probably dumb. It was a good photo. Probably real. But good doesn't mean permanent. Real doesn't mean forever. I didn't burn the letters. I didn't tear the photos. I just boxed them again. Labeled the box properly this time, then. And I shelved it. Around 6 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Her. I told my mom. That was all. No follow-up. No emotion. Like she was texting about groceries. I didn't respond. Some people text you not because they want connection, but because they hate silence. And silence, to someone who thrives on noise, feels like exile. 2 days later, I ran into her brother at a gas station. He stared for a long second before speaking. Hey, you okay? I shrugged. Better than expected. He nodded slowly. She's not. I didn't ask for details. But he gave them anyway. She's been calling everyone. Telling different versions. In one, you left out of nowhere. In another, you were jealous. In one, you were cheating. I raised an eyebrow. He sighed. I told her to stop. Said she lost her right to shape the ending. I appreciated that. Genuinely. But I didn't need it. Because here's the thing about lies. They travel fast, but truth always shows up. Might not wear glitter. Might not bring a parade. But it walks in with receipts. and I had a whole folder of them. That night, I opened the sock drawer theory file one last time. Not to add anything. To delete it. All of it. Gone. Because the moment I stopped carrying proof, I started carrying peace. I walked to the river after midnight, just me and the city lights bouncing off the water like soft reminders that movement is quiet. I sat on a bench, wrote one last entry in the notebook. Final entry. She said I made her feel safe, then left because safety wasn't enough. That's not on me. That's her storm to weather. I'm building a house without a ceiling, just sky. I don't need revenge. I need room. It had been a month. 32 days, technically. Not that I was counting, but my toothbrush still was. It sat in a ceramic cup next to a fresh one and used, unopened. Not symbolic. Just dental hygiene. But it reminded me I was building a life where no one borrowed things and called it love. I hadn't heard from her in a week. Not since she texted about splitting the furniture. The couch? She could have it. I was never really allowed to sit on it anyway. But then came the email. Subject line, closure. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit there, bold and unread, like a dog waiting at a door it doesn't realize is locked. When I finally clicked it, it was exactly what I expected. A performance. I just wanted to explain, she wrote. I never meant for things to end this way. I was confused. I felt invisible. Funny. I'd spent the last year trying to be her mirror. She continued, what happened with Elliot, it wasn't serious. It was a moment. You have to understand that. I didn't. She didn't sign it love. She signed it take care. That was the part that stung the most. Not because it was cold. Because it was convenient. I archived the email. Didn't respond. Because the last apology never comes. Just versions of a story where they get to be misunderstood instead of wrong. The only closure I needed was silence. And a good chair. So I bought one. Real leather. Dark green. Something that said, this is my space now. That night, I sat in it, cracked open a book, and read the first chapter out loud. Just to hear my voice again. It was nice. Not because the story was good, but because it was mine. There's something sacred about routine when it's no longer forced. I started making Sunday pancakes again. For myself. 3 stack. No blueberries. She liked those. I preferred plain. With syrup. The good kind. Not the brand she bought because it matched the aesthetic. I adopted a dog from the shelter. Her name was Ruby. She was blind in one eye and terrible at fetch, but loyal like gravity. She didn't judge the music I played or care how long I took in the shower. She just existed. With me. No expectations. No passive resentment. One day, at the dog park, a woman in a red hoodie asked if Ruby was mine. She picked me. I said. She smiled. That's the best kind of love. Her name was Camille. We talked for an hour. About everything and nothing. She had a laugh that didn't wait for approval. I liked that. I didn't ask for her number. I wasn't ready. But it was the first conversation I'd had in months that didn't feel like I was holding my breath. That night, Ruby fell asleep on my foot while I folded laundry. I reached for my sock drawer. Yes, still organized. And realized something. It no longer represented control. Or routine. Or loneliness. It was just socks. And that felt revolutionary. 3 months to the day, I ran into her. Grocery store. Aisle 5. King Goods. Ironic. She turned the corner, and there I was, holding a can of black beans like it was a weapon. She froze. I didn't. "Oh," she said, like my name still belonged to her mouth. "Tabitha," I replied. Calm. Distant. Not cruel, just accurate. She looked tired. Not devastated. Just tired. Like someone who hadn't slept well in a while, because truth is hard on a pillow. "How are you?" she asked. "Better," I said. She nodded like she didn't expect that answer. Like she was hoping I'd be fractured enough to justify her choices. I just wanted to say. I held up a hand. "Don't." She blinked. "You said everything you needed to when you chose someone else," I said. "You don't get to narrate the sequel." Her eyes welled up, but I didn't feel satisfaction. Just a strange peace. Like watching a movie you already know the ending to and realizing you no longer care who wins. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I added. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Maybe for the first time, she understood. This wasn't anger. This was freedom. And she didn't know how to respond to that. We passed each other in the aisle like strangers. Because that's what we were now. Not enemies. Not lovers. Just people who once shared a chapter neither of us wanted to reread. That night, I took Ruby on a longer walk than usual. The stars were out. The city was quiet. And I finally finally, felt the weight of her absence lift like smoke. I didn't burn the past. I just outgrew it. And somewhere in that quiet, I realized. She didn't break me. She freed me.